She manipulated me into signing over our $300, $0 house and a $50, $0 life insurance policy, then secretly sold both to fund her affair with my best friend. Now she's threatening to take everything in court while I'm left with nothing. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing a story about how I got completely blindsided by my wife, but here I am. The craziest part. It all started with what seemed like a normal day, but turned into one of the biggest shocks of my life. I had no idea that behind my back she was manipulating me into signing away everything we had, our house, our life insurance, so she could fund some secret affair with my best friend. Yeah, you read that right. The guy I trusted with my life, the one I'd shared everything with, turned around and used my trust to take everything I had. And the worst part, she's now threatening to drag me through court to take what's left while I sit here with nothing. Her name's Lisa. She's charming, manipulative, and a total bitch when she wants to be. I always knew she was good at twisting words, but I never thought she'd go this far. We met when I was in my late 20s. She was working as a marketing exec and I was a small business owner. At first, everything seemed perfect. She was beautiful, confident, and she knew how to make me feel like I was the luckiest guy alive. We got married 5 years ago, bought a house together, our dream home, or so I thought, and I thought we had a solid future. But slowly things started changing. Small signs initially, late nights, secretive texts, her phone always on silent. I brushed it off at first, telling myself she was just busy with work or friends. But then came the subtle shifts in her attitude. She became more bitchy, more dismissive, and I caught her lying about small things, where she was, who she was talking to. I remember one night I found her phone open on the couch, a message from some guy named Matt that said, "Call. Wait to see you tonight." When I asked her about it, she told me it was just a coworker, nothing serious, just some harmless flirtation, but I knew better. The real shock came when I started digging. I've always been cautious with money, but Lisa had a way of making everything seem normal. Tell me she was saving for our future, that she was responsible. Then I noticed the house was quieter than usual, no more renovations, no more spontaneous trips. I checked the bank statements and that's when I saw it. Large, unexplained withdrawals, transfers I didn't recognize. I took a deeper dive and found out she'd signed over the house, our house, the one we'd worked so hard for, to some shady real estate guy, claiming it was for investment purposes. I was stunned. How did she do that without my knowledge? Turns out, she manipulated me into signing papers I never really read. She's good at that, convincing me I was doing the right thing, that it was for our future. She also took out a $50, $0 life insurance policy, again, under my name. I didn't realize until I saw the paperwork that she'd secretly sold the house and cashed out the policy, using the money to fund her affair. That's when I found out she'd been sleeping with my best friend, Jason. She'd been sneaking around with him for months, probably even before I suspected anything, and she used my trust and her manipulation to cover her tracks. I confronted her about it all. I showed her the bank statements, the insurance documents, the messages I found. Her reaction. She called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and then threw in some bullshit about how I was overreacting, that I was just jealous. She lied through her teeth, saying she loved me, that I was imagining things, that I was crazy for suspecting her. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she fidgeted, the way she avoided my questions. That night I felt like I was hit by a truck. My whole world was crumbling. I'd been blindsided by her lies, betrayed by my best friend, and robbed of everything I worked for. The house, the insurance, gone. All because she wanted some affair, some thrill, some escape from a life she claimed she hated. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal that I can't even put into words. I'd always thought I was the one holding everything together, but it turns out I was just a pawn in her game. And now, I had to figure out what to do next, knowing she was probably planning her next move to take everything I have left. After that night, everything changed. I stayed up all night, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. It was like my whole world had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. I was furious at myself for trusting her so blindly, furious at Jason for betraying me the way he did, and furious at her for manipulating me into signing away our home and insurance under false pretenses. The morning after, I decided I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I needed to get some clarity, some proof, and figure out my next move. I started digging through the paperwork again, looking at every detail, every signature, every transfer. I found more discrepancies, documents she'd forged, signatures that looked suspicious, and emails from her trying to cover her tracks. It felt like I was unraveling a web of lies she'd spun over months. I also reached out to a lawyer just to get some advice, even though I knew she'd probably try to intimidate me into backing down. My first real shock came when I confronted her again. This time I told her I knew everything: the affair, the signings, the sales. Her response: she threw her head back and laughed, telling me I was just jealous, that I was imagining things, that Jason was just a friend helping her with some business ideas. She insisted she loved me and that I was overreacting. She even claimed I was paranoid and that I was the one ruining everything. That moment made me realize how good she was at lying, how she could spin any story to make herself the victim. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I also knew I had to stay strong and keep digging. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and so damn stupid for trusting her. I kept replaying everything in my head: how she'd always been so charming, so convincing, and how I'd missed all the signs. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, but mostly I was angry at her for doing this to me. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and she'd shattered that. Every time I thought about how she manipulated me into signing the house over, I felt sick. She played me like a puppet, convincing me I was doing what was best for us when she was secretly planning her escape. And Jason, God, that was the hardest part. My best friend, the guy I'd trusted with my life. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I didn't notice the late-night calls, the secret meetings, the way she'd suddenly become distant and cold when I was around. I'd always thought she was just busy, just stressed. Turns out she'd been sleeping with my best friend for months, probably even before I found out. That realization hurt worse than anything else. It was like my whole life was a lie. Now I was stuck in this limbo. I knew she was planning to fight me in court, claiming I was trying to cheat her out of her rights or some bullshit. She threatened me with legal action if I didn't sign some new documents saying she'd take everything, what little was left, and leave me with nothing. That's when I finally decided I wasn't going down without a fight. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find: emails, bank statements, witness statements if I could get them. I wanted her to see I wasn't backing down. Honestly, part of me feels completely broken. I don't even recognize the man I am anymore. I trusted her with everything: my heart, my money, my future, and she threw it all away for some affair and some quick cash. I keep asking myself how I let it get this far, how I was so blind to her lies. But I also know I have to keep going to stand up for what's mine. I don't know how this will all end, but I do know one thing: I will not let her take everything I built. Not without a fight. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself or waiting for her next move. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family and property law. From the start, he told me I had a solid case, especially since she'd forged signatures and lied about the sale of our house and the insurance policy. He explained that I had grounds to contest the transactions, and I felt a slight glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't completely screwed after all. But even with that hope, the emotional toll was brutal. Every time I thought about her manipulating me into signing those papers, I felt sick. She lied, cheated, and used my trust to get what she wanted. It was like she had played the long game, bidding her time, pretending everything was fine, then pulling the rug out from under me. I kept asking myself how she could be so cold, so calculating. I mean, she told me she loved me, that I was her everything, while secretly planning her escape with my best friend. That kind of betrayal messes with your head. One thing I couldn't understand: how did she manage to do all of this without me catching on? She's bitchy, manipulative, and a master at lying, but I thought I knew her. Turns out, I was just too blind to see her true colors. She'd always been good at hiding her true intentions, smiling in my face while planning her next move. She'd lie about small stuff, like where she was or who she was with, but I brushed it off because I trusted her. Now, I realized she was grooming me to sign away everything, and I was just too caught up in my own world to see it. I also learned some shocking details about the sale of the house and the insurance policy. She signed over the house to some shady real estate agent, claiming it was for investment purposes. I found the documents in her emails and the signatures looked suspicious. They weren't mine. She forged my name, probably while I was at work or distracted. The insurance policy, she'd secretly cashed it out and the money was gone. That's how she funded her affair. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she betray me so coldly? I confronted her again, furious this time. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the forged signatures, the sale of our house. Her reaction was bizarre. She just looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "You're overreacting, honey. You're just jealous because Jason and I are happy. You don't understand what you're losing." She insisted she loved me, that I was just paranoid, and that she'd never do anything to hurt me. I wanted to believe her, but every fiber of my being told me she was lying again. She always did. That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal was eating me alive. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I kept replaying everything: her lies, her manipulations, the way she'd sneaked around behind my back. I felt so stupid for trusting her, so naive. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare and I couldn't wake up. I wondered how I'd ever rebuild from this, whether I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But the thing that kept me going was the idea that I had to fight for what's mine. She might have manipulated me into signing away our home, but I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I had evidence, and I was going to use it. I started to prepare for the legal battle, gathering everything I could find: emails, recordings, bank statements, and I made a plan. I knew she'd try to turn things around, make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I was determined to prove she'd lied, cheated, and manipulated her way into my life and my assets. Honestly, I'm exhausted just thinking about the fight ahead. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about standing up to her, about reclaiming some shred of dignity after she's tried to destroy me. I keep asking myself how I got here, how I let her do this. But I also realize I can't change the past. All I can do now is prepare for the next chapter, whatever that might be, and hope I come out of this stronger. Even if I end up with nothing, I refuse to let her win completely. I deserve better than this. The legal process started moving faster than I expected. My lawyer advised me to file a claim to contest the sale of the house and the cashing out of the insurance policy. It was a painful process, digging through all the documents, gathering evidence, and preparing for what I knew would be a long fight. She, of course, responded with her typical bitchy attitude, sending threatening emails and calling me paranoid. She played the victim, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was jealous and insecure. But I had enough. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this one. In the meantime, I started to see how deeply she'd gone into her lies. She used her charm to cover her tracks, but the cracks started to show. She'd been telling her friends I was controlling and paranoid, trying to turn everyone against me. But I didn't care. I knew the truth and I had proof. I also uncovered some of her messages to Jason, things she never thought I'd find. They were full of promises, flirty texts, and plans for secret meetings. It made me sick to read them, knowing she'd been playing me for months. The betrayal cut so deep, I felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. Every day I woke up with a knot in my stomach, wondering what she'd do next. She was relentless, calling me, threatening me with court, trying to intimidate me into giving up. But I stayed strong. I told her I was fighting for what was rightfully mine, and I was prepared to go all the way. One of the most shocking moments was when I discovered she'd secretly sold the house to some random investor. She forged my signature on the deed, claiming she had my approval. I confronted her about it, and she just shrugged it off, acting like I was overreacting. That's when I realized how far she was willing to go. She'd lied, manipulated, and even committed fraud just to get her way. She was dangerous, and I had to be careful. I also found out that she'd been lying about her job all along. She told me she was working late, attending meetings, trying to build her career. But behind the scenes, she was sneaking around with Jason and planning her escape. I saw texts where she called him her savior, her escape plan, and how she was counting on him to help her get out of this mess. It was like I was living with a stranger. Someone who'd lied to my face for months while secretly planning her betrayal. Every time I thought I was making progress, she'd throw another curveball. She hired her own lawyer, and suddenly the legal battle was turning into a nightmare. She accused me of trying to control her, said I was trying to take her rights away, and threatened to sue me for harassment. I couldn't believe the audacity. She was the one who manipulated me into signing all those papers, who sold our house behind my back, and now she was playing the victim. I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about proving she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from me. I had to take her to court to get back what was rightfully mine, our house, the insurance money, and whatever else she'd taken. It was the only way to stop her from destroying what little I had left. Honestly, some days I felt like giving up. The emotional exhaustion was overwhelming. I'd wake up angry, then sink into despair, then find a flicker of hope. But I knew I couldn't let her win. Not like this. I had to keep fighting for myself, for what I believed was right. I'd been blindsided by her manipulation, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done one way or another. I also started to reach out to some of her friends, trying to find out what they knew. Not that I trusted anyone at this point, but I needed to understand how deep her lies went. Turns out she'd been spinning stories about me, saying I was abusive, controlling, jealous. She painted herself as the victim, and some people believed her. That made me madder. I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let her smear my name without fighting back. I wanted everyone to see who she really was: manipulative, selfish, and willing to destroy everything for her own sake. This whole ordeal has changed me forever. I used to think trust and loyalty mattered. Now I see how easily people can lie, cheat, and manipulate. I learned a hard lesson about who you can really count on. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how much it hurts. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her take everything I worked for without a fight. I will get justice, even if it kills me. The court date finally came, and I was a nervous wreck. All the evidence I'd gathered, emails, forged signatures, bank statements, witness statements, was ready to be presented. I knew Lisa would do everything she could to spin her lies and make herself look innocent, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. When I walked into that courtroom, I felt like I was stepping into a war zone. Every eye was on us, and I could see her bitchy smirk as she sat there, confident she'd get away with everything. The hearing started with her lawyer trying to dismiss my claims, claiming I was just bitter and jealous. But I had everything documented. I presented the forged signatures, the email exchanges between her and Jason, the sale of the house, the cashing out of the insurance policy. I detailed how she manipulated me into signing papers I never read, how she lied about her work, and how she'd been planning her escape for months. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing every piece of evidence. Lisa's reaction was classic. She tried to deny everything, claiming I was just paranoid and that I'd fabricated the evidence. She even had the nerve to cry and act like the victim, saying I was controlling and jealous. But her tears didn't work on the judge, who looked at her with a mixture of skepticism and disappointment. When my lawyer finished presenting, the judge took a long pause before announcing that she'd review everything and make a decision. The wait was torture. I felt like I was living in limbo, unsure if I'd get my house back or if Lisa would somehow find a way to block me. I kept replaying everything: her lies, her manipulations, the betrayal of my trust. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again after this. When the judge finally gave her ruling, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She ordered Lisa to return the house to me, to pay back the money from the insurance policy, and to cease all claims against me. It was a small victory, but it felt like I'd just survived a war. Of course, Lisa didn't take the loss quietly. She threw a fit outside the courtroom, screaming that she'd see me in court again and that I'd never get what I wanted. She called me names, accused me of ruining her life, and threatened to destroy me legally and financially. I just watched her with a cold stare. I knew this wasn't over. She'd find some way to fight back, and I had to be ready for it. But for now, I felt a strange sense of victory, knowing I'd fought for what was rightfully mine. The aftermath was a mess. I had to move out of the small apartment I'd found after she took the house. I was left with almost nothing, some savings, a few belongings, and a broken heart. She, on the other hand, was already planning her next move, trying to rally her friends and her lawyer to come after me again. I realized how dangerous she really was. She'd lied, cheated, manipulated, and now she was trying to destroy me legally. But I had learned so much from this experience. I'd never trust blindly again, and I'd be more cautious with who I let into my life. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the only way to fight back is with the truth. No matter how much someone manipulates or lies, the truth has a way of coming out. I won't say I'm fully healed. This kind of betrayal leaves scars, but I'm stronger now. I know I can stand up for myself, even against someone as bitchy, manipulative, and ruthless as Lisa. I have a long road ahead, but I'm determined to rebuild. I refuse to let her win entirely. Looking back, I wish I could say I learned this lesson earlier, that I saw through her lies from the start. But I guess some lessons only come after you've been completely shattered. If I could give anyone in a similar situation advice, it would be this: trust your instincts, keep records, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Don't let someone manipulate you into giving away everything you've worked for, because in the end, the truth will come out, sometimes in court, sometimes in life. But it always comes out. Now I spend a lot of time thinking about everything I went through. It's a strange mix of anger, relief, and a sense of loss. I lost my house, my savings, my trust, maybe even part of myself in the process. But I also gained something I didn't expect: clarity. The betrayal was so deep that it forced me to see things clearly for the first time. I realized how dangerous manipulation can be, how people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face and sweet words. Lisa's bitchiness, her lies, her constant lying about everything, those traits finally made sense when I saw her for who she really was. Looking back, I wish I'd been more cautious from the start. I wish I'd paid closer attention to the signs: her secretive texts, her sudden coldness, the way she always managed to spin her lies so convincingly. But then again, who expects their wife to be secretly sleeping with their best friend, forging signatures, and planning to take everything they have? It's the kind of betrayal you never see coming, no matter how careful you think you are. The most valuable lesson I learned is that you can't trust blindly, especially not the people closest to you. Even those who seem perfect can turn out to be the exact opposite. And when someone manipulates you into signing away your life, your home, your security, they're not just stealing your assets, they're stealing your sense of safety and stability. That's what hurts the most. Knowing I was played for a fool, that I let her manipulate me into giving her everything she wanted, and that I was powerless to stop it until it was too late. But I also found strength in fighting back. I refused to let her walk away with everything. I fought in court, gathered evidence, and stood my ground. That process taught me that even in the face of betrayal, you have to be relentless. You have to stand up for yourself and never let someone like her, so bitchy, so manipulative, win without a fight. She thought she could walk all over me, but I proved her wrong. I proved that the truth, no matter how ugly or painful, will come out. Now I'm rebuilding my life slowly. It's not easy, and I won't pretend I'm fully healed. The scars are still there, and I probably always carry some of the pain. But I'm learning to trust again, cautiously. I've become more aware of red flags, more skeptical of people's motives, and more determined to protect what's mine. I won't let her or anyone else manipulate me like that again. And to anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, whether you're dealing with a cheating spouse, manipulative partner, or someone trying to take everything you have. My advice is simple: stay vigilant, keep records, don't trust blindly, fight for what's yours. Because at the end of the day, the truth will come out and you have to be ready to face it. It's a hard lesson, but it's one that's made me stronger. And if I've learned anything, it's that no matter how bitchy, manipulative, or ruthless someone is, truth and resilience will always find a way to prevail.